It's such a beautiful day to have our EFTI seminar. Good afternoon. Welcome to our Mondays with EFTI Talk, the Eric Friedheim Tourism Institute, and the Department of Tourism, Hospitality, and Event Management in the College of Health and Human Performance at the University of Florida are presenting to you EFTI Talk. It is my great honor to introduce our moderator, Claire Lessinger, who will introduce our panelists and serve as a moderator for today's program. Claire Lessinger serves as the Vice President at the Tampa Bay Sport Commission. Claire and the Tampa Bay Sport Commission are responsible for driving economic and social impact by identifying, bidding on, and hosting sporting and entertainment events in Tampa Bay. Claire has served as the tournament manager for the NCAA Women's Volleyball Championship, the Women's Final Four, the NCAA Men's Frozen Four, the Men's and Women's Cross Country Championships, the NCAA Men's and Women's Outdoor Track and Field, and the NCAA Women's Lacrosse Championship. As Tampa Bay hosted its Super Bowl in February 2021, Claire served as Chief Operating Officer for the Tampa Bay Super Bowl Host Committee, overseeing internal operations, special events, legacy programming, and community engagement. Claire spent 5 years as the collegiate volleyball player at the University of Florida, where she won 5 SEC championships, participated in 5 NCAA tournaments and 3 Final Four tournaments. In honor of her hard work and dedication, the UF volleyball program established the Claire Roach Defensive Award, which is still presented annually to the best defensive player on the team. She graduated from UF in 1997 with a Bachelor of Science degree in the College of Health Human Performance. Active in the community, Claire serves on the advisory board of Women in Leadership and Philanthropy, Positive Coaching Alliance, and the University of Florida Eric Friedheim Tourism Institute, and a founding member and vice president of Women in Sports and Event Tampa Bay. Claire, stage is yours. You are wonderful. Thank you for putting this powerful bag together for us. Thank you.
Rachel, thank you. And I have to start by saying go Gators, of course, and just love watching the UF volleyball team make quite a run in this year's NCAA tournament. So we know Mary's gonna bring one home here eventually. But again, thanks so much for having us. It's a pleasure to be joining you today. And this is going to be a really fun, dynamic conversation with truly some of my favorite people, but the leading ladies of the Tampa Bay Super Bowl LV host committee. As Rachel mentioned, I served as the COO for the host committee, but I'm the VP of events, and today I'm moderating. So I get to sit back and throw other people into the hot seat, which is really fun for me. But I can't wait for them to share the stories, the insights, the highs, the lows, some behind the scenes and lessons learned from what was an unbelievable hosting experience for our community and for our host committee. So real quick, I'm just going to introduce them by title, and then I'm going to let them share a little bit about themselves, where they were prior to the host committee. I think that's important to understand. And then I'll dive a little bit into how we ended up here today, and then of course into a fun and dynamic Q&A. So first, Jenna Grooms, and Jenna, just wave your hand. Jenna Grooms, Director of Host Committee Events. Brooke Skelly, Director of Marketing and Communications. Lisa Urban, Director of Community Ambassador Program. And Lakindra Robinson, Director of Business Connect and Community Outreach. So I'm going to throw it to Jenna first to give a little bit of background on herself.
Thanks, Claire. Appreciate that. Hi, guys. Jenna Grooms here. I am a full-time member of the Tampa Bay Sports Commission, but as Claire mentioned, served as the director of host committee events for the host committee. So my career started as an intern with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, born and raised here in Tampa Bay. So knew that sports was my passion and wanted to get into the sports industry. So did so right away. And then spent 5 seasons with the Bucks as their special events and operations coordinator. Left for a brief stint into the agency world, but very quickly realized that I missed sports. So through a connection that I had to the sports commission that I had met at the Bucks, and that went to the same college as me at University of Central Florida, I was introduced to the great team of the sports commission who I had heard so much about, and was lucky enough to kind of fit in a right place, right time situation, and have now been with the sports commission for 5 years. So love every minute of what we do, and certainly the Super Bowl is a big part of that. So excited to talk to you guys a little bit about what we did over the past year.
Thanks, Jenna. All right, Brooke, you're up.
Hey guys, Brooke Skelly. I was the Director of Marketing Communications for the Super Bowl. I am not full-time with the Sports Commission, so I am actually not even with you guys anymore. So this is a pleasure to be on here and get to see their faces. But I was kind of the same as Jenna, worked with a team beforehand. So went to Clemson, was able to get into sports there, and then transitioned working for the Panthers my first year out of school, and then got a great opportunity to come down and join the Bucks for 3+ seasons. When the time came that I kind of felt like I needed to go to that next step, I was like, the Super Bowl's here, the Sports Commission's amazing, and kind of just annoyed Claire until she got coffee with me and we wrote up a job description. So it was an amazing 17 months. I learned so much. Definitely never knew. Don't think anybody knew what we were getting ourselves into, planning a Super Bowl during a pandemic, but we learned a lot. We stuck together, and it was a great success. So I look forward to speaking with all of you.
Awesome. Thanks, Brooke. Okay, Lisa.
Good morning. Thank you so much for having me on this panel. I, like Brooke Skelly, I'm not a full-time member of the Sports Commission, so I finished my contract with the host committee back in March, so I'm thankful to be seeing everyone's faces again this morning as well. Prior to joining the host committee, I was working with Ernst & Young, the accounting firm, actually doing something very similar. So I was working in staffing in an internal capacity. Prior to that, I actually worked with Visit Tampa Bay for 5 years, from 2010 to 2015, and they share space with the Sports Commission. So I got to be involved in all of the Sports Commission events during that period, and then just luckily maintained friendships and helped them out with everything random that happened over the 5 years that I left. And so after a good 10 years of time with that organization, I was fortunate enough to be able to apply and get the role for the Community Ambassador Program for Super Bowl. So super exciting stuff. I was on board for about, I guess it was like 15 months or something like that. And it was quite a wild ride during that period.
And we will definitely get more into that wild ride here in a little bit. All right, Lakindra, give us a little background on yourself.
Awesome. Hello, everyone. Lakindra Robinson. Again, I served as the Director for Business Connect and Community Outreach for the Super Bowl Host Committee. I am actually finishing up my term with the Host Committee this coming week, which is exciting but sad at the same time. Prior to joining the Host Committee, I worked for the Tampa Bay Chamber and led the creation and implementation of their Minority Business Accelerator Program, which is a program to help diverse businesses grow and thrive in Tampa Bay. And prior to that, when I first moved to Tampa about 7.5 years ago, worked with a nonprofit, helping them develop a social impact program for local diverse businesses as well. So I was very excited to learn that my name had been thrown into the hat for this particular position. And similar to Brooke, once I found out that my name was thrown into the hat, I literally stalked Claire and showed up everywhere that she was, until we were able to sit down and kind of talk about me joining the team. And it really has been a dream ever since then.
So those of you that are listening, stalking pays off. So two folks landed jobs on the host committee by being really good stalkers. No, this is literally, you're only seeing a glimpse of our rock star team. We were small but mighty, 13 of us. And important to share a little bit of the dynamics around the way we build a host committee here in Tampa. It is our key core group is made up of the sports commission team. So there are 7 of us that drive. We're really in charge of the bidding efforts. We're the driver and the engine behind that bidding process. And of course, it takes a village, and we'll get into that a lot more later too, in terms of the whole host community backing the process as well as the execution efforts. But for the Super Bowl, and of course it being an anomaly, it was a 501c6 that we created alongside of it for our staff. And then we onboarded three of the folks that are with us here today and continue to grow that staff as we identified those core needs. And that hiring process started 24 months out and went to about 12 months out to create a team of 13 that were working day in, day out on the Super Bowl. To back it up even a little bit more, let's share with the group really quick about how we landed here. So some of you may know that LA originally won Super Bowl 55. In the bid process. Their construction was falling behind on their new stadium, which meant that the owners and the NFL needed to go back to the drawing board to figure out who could step in and fill those shoes. It was unanimously voted that Tampa was awarded that opportunity. So in 2017, it was awarded to Tampa. Our work began that day. Fundraising efforts usually start 5 to 6 years out. So we were trapped into a little bit smaller of a window to do that. And then the team began work. So it wasn't till, so we built up our org structure, we started fundraising, and then of course, the pandemic. So that was something that we navigated every step of the way. This group here is going to share a lot about that and how we created such a success story in the end. But really, we were in Atlanta. We had a team in Atlanta taking notes. Then we had a huge delegation that was in Miami. This is a really important piece of the process for us to go kind of live and learn each Super Bowl, pick the brains of those that host before us, and of course, continue to develop that unbelievable relationship with the NFL and their key team members. So fast forward, I'll just kind of start us a year out. We hosted a familiarization tour with the NFL, which was our only on-site planning visit. And that was in December. And then everything went virtual. We planned an entire Super Bowl for a year virtually and didn't welcome them back on site in person until November prior to the game. So I think that's an incredible piece of this success story. We were all challenged on how to do that and how to do that successfully. What we did know and what we didn't know were 2 very different lists. and the one thing we did know was that there were 3 things that weren't going to change in this process. There were lots of contingency plans. There are lots of constant changes. There are lots of unpredictable, of course, the predictable nature of navigating this pandemic. But these 3 things: media exposure, legacy impact, and the opportunity to work with our good partners at the NFL and make sure that not only were we the best partners, but that we were delivering and navigating these uncharted waters together. And so those were the 3 areas. 1, we knew the course wasn't going to change, were a priority of ours, and that we invested in every step of the way. We're going to break those down for you because we've got the experts on this call to do that. So first and foremost, let's start with media exposure. So Brooke, with all eyes on Tampa Bay, how did the host committee leverage this platform and opportunity to tell the community's story?
Hey, Claire. So like you said, all eyes were on Tampa Bay and we knew it. So people were either watching because they normally watched or they were curious, how in the world are they going to pull this off? Whatever it was, all eyes really were on Tampa Bay. And so we wanted to make sure that we leveraged that. So instead of, the normal things that we focus on, such as how many events there are, even I was laughing talking to our multimedia manager. He said, Brooke, I'm usually looking for the most busy photo, like the most packed photo. And things are transitioning. So we really had to tell our own narrative so it didn't write itself. So we transitioned from what we normally see as a success to what we really wanted to focus on. We wanted to focus on the legacy that this was going to leave in our community, not just now, but for years to come. And I know Claire is going to touch on a lot on our social legacy initiative. But then in addition to that, we also wanted to show everyone who we were. 2009 was the last time that we hosted the Super Bowl. All eyes were on Tampa Bay. How far have we come from our downtown footprint to everything that's happened at the airport? People just flooding into Tampa because it's such a great place to live, kind of this hidden gem. So we knew that we needed to shift quickly, and thankfully our head honcho boss, Rob Higgins, who's amazing, was all on board and never looked back, and the NFL was by our side. So we took to social media, we took to the community where we could safely, and I think it was a huge success.
Awesome. It really was. I mean, our community shined like never before, and we've been given this opportunity to do so over and over again. At the Sports Commission, we constantly say we don't judge our success on whether we win the business, it's whether we win it back. To have this opportunity to host our 5th Super Bowl and to be challenged at every turn, but of course, creatively come up with ways to ensure that our community story was told the way we wanted it to be told, and was gaining the limelight as it deserved during this time. So our tagline for our host committee was "Forward Forever Together." Those 3 words drove everything that we did. We looked through almost these 3 words, these lenses of these 3 words, and everything we did. They were really powerful. And the social impact initiatives that were launched and executed alongside the Super Bowl were unbelievably inspiring and impactful. And that's what they were not only created to do, but alongside this Super Bowl of all Super Bowls, it was about inspiring change. It was about social impact. It was about giving our community a shot in the arm when it needed it most. And our community and these local organizations and nonprofits and beneficiaries that were able to truly feel this impact from these hosting efforts was unbelievably and wildly successful. So I want to start, we're going to highlight a few. This could be its own segment. And so I want to just pause and highlight a few. And we're going to start with Business Connect. Under Lakindria's leadership, Business Connect in Tampa Bay was truly taken to new heights. So Lakindria, if you can, share a little bit about how the host committee partnered with the NFL, but then of course, how you pivoted, and then how you implemented and executed one of the most successful Business Connect programs to date.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you so much, Claire. So Business Connect is the NFL's official supplier diversity program for the Super Bowl. And so in partnership with the NFL, as Claire mentioned, our host committee engaged local diverse businesses in Tampa Bay to help fulfill any and all contract opportunities that were available for the Super Bowl. So for example, we worked to secure companies that provided services like catering, event decor, security, and janitorial services, which were critically important this year. Not that it isn't important every year, but janitorial services became a hot commodity, as you can imagine. Most of the local vendors must be secured in the host city about a year in advance of game day. So when NFL contractors actually come to the city, they have a group of businesses that they can then work with to help essentially build and create the Super Bowl. So my team and I began recruiting businesses in the fall of 2019, which of course was pre-COVID. And so we had all of these wonderful plans, had all of these wonderful opportunities for our businesses to engage in the program. And then COVID hit. But prior to COVID hitting, we actually were able to get through the recruitment process fairly easily. We did receive just over 1,200 applications from businesses that wanted to be an approved vendor for the Super Bowl. And in the end, after shortlisting all of the shortlisting companies and hosting in-person pitch days, which seems like forever ago now, we were able to select just over 200 businesses to be approved vendors for the Super Bowl. In terms of demographics of those companies, over half of those businesses were designated minority-owned businesses. And then we also had a comparable number of woman-owned, veteran-owned, and LGBTQ-owned businesses that were selected as approved vendors based on the number of candidates that we actually had apply in those categories. So we're really, really excited about the way that the overall demographics and the diversity of the businesses that we had for our NFL contractors to select from. So right after all of our businesses, we recruited all of our companies. Right after they were selected, mid-March is when COVID hit and literally everything stopped for everybody. And so my team and I quickly pivoted and changed the entire format of the NFL's program, which they were really supportive of, which was kind of surprising because it's their baby, right? And so we came in and we were working with them to figure out how to ease the tensions and anxiety of a lot of our business owners. So we ended up increasing communication, I feel like probably tenfold, through personal phone calls every month, a lot of email communication, and we even did a monthly newsletter to just kind of communicate what was happening, what they could expect, and really open the lines of communication for them to ask us any of the questions that they had about the Super Bowl planning process. And so we also went virtual because that's the only choice that we had. And so normally the Business Connect program will host about 6 in-person events. However, because that was not a possibility for us, we ended up hosting almost 20 virtual events, including professional development webinars that addressed COVID-19 concerns and challenges that our businesses were facing. We also did virtual happy hours. I mean, literally in 2020, people that were invited to virtual happy hours were excited because it was like, hey, I get to talk to real people and I get to have a drink. Woohoo. And then we also did some networking events as well so that the businesses could meet and connect with each other. So after the Super Bowl, they could continue to work together. Now, another thing that our host committee implemented was the NFL's first Road to Game Day Restaurant Week under the Business Connect brand, which had never happened before. And so Restaurant Week was a way for our host committee and the NFL to partner to support local diverse restaurants in Tampa Bay that were experiencing hardships as a result of COVID-19. And so it was a 10-day event where our community literally went out and supported each of the nearly 40 restaurants that were participating. And because our community is so amazing, each of those participating restaurants actually donated a portion of their sales during Restaurant Week to Feeding Tampa Bay to support eradicating hunger in our community. And they ended up donating about $3,000 to Feeding Tampa Bay, which provides 30,000 meals to families in Tampa Bay, which is incredible. So both the NFL and the host committee received a ton of positive support and recognition for Restaurant Week, so much so that the NFL actually agreed to continue to implement Restaurant Week in its future host cities, with LA being the next one. So it's definitely a legacy that we are extremely proud of. All in all, our host committee alongside the NFL really worked to redefine the NFL's Business Connect program, increase engagement among the local diverse businesses that were included, and the NFL and their team in a way that the NFL has agreed and even recognized will change the way Business Connect operates in the future. So, yeah.
Awesome. Thank you, Lakindra. And you speak a little bit about how it's going to change Business Connect for the NFL and future host cities, but this legacy initiative will also change the way we do business in our own community moving forward, especially as it relates to major events and sourcing vendors. So it has had an incredible amount of impact and will continue to have an incredible amount of impact. And under your leadership and the playbook we now have in place, a huge asset and resource to us and to our community. So thank you. Another huge success story when you talk legacy is our actual legacy program that was called Forever 55. Forever 55, in partnership with the NFL, was a $2 million investment, $1 million raised by the host committee, $1 million matched by the NFL. And we created 6 pillars, and where this investment went back into our community, 6 pillars truly represented our community's greatest needs Then you add a pandemic, and those needs were unbelievably elevated and escalated. And so it took thought leaders, strategic planning to make sure that this $2 million investment not only was going to the right place, but was going to impact our community well after the day that the streamers fall on the field. And so real quick, I'll just list those pillars. And early childhood education was one of our pillars, where we actually piloted a program called First 1,000 Days Tampa Bay that will address that brain development in the most critical years of a mother and child's life together. Food insecurity, we partnered with Gen Youth and Florida Blue and installed 55 breakfast carts into 55 need-based schools throughout our Tri-County area to ensure that those students are getting a healthy breakfast every day. As LaKendria mentioned, we did multiple initiatives with Feeding Tampa Bay and the NFL throughout the planning, as well as Super Bowl week. Families was our third pillar. We adopted 55 families. We designated these 55 families through partnerships with MetMen, American Cancer Society, and the Tampa Bay Black Heritage Festival, where really the goal was to get these dollars, specific dollars, into these families' hands and to help transition them to self-sufficiency. As mentioned, these programs are all ongoing. These families are still in the process of getting identified, but also benefiting from this investment. Health and wellness, we teamed up with our home team and champs, Tampa Bay Buccaneers, in support of their youth mentorship program, which really provides tools and resources to students to improve their physical and social emotional well-being. And then systemic justice. The host committee launched and partnered on a handful of community initiatives, also was driven by a very powerful advisory committee, experts in this space, that helped us identify not only where these dollars go, but the programming that we need to be investing in, and created 3 pillars as well here, but really addressing racial inequalities and ensuring that we're driving transformative change. So we launched a campaign, as Brooke mentioned, a Forever 55 campaign for 55 days leading up to game day. We told this story. We highlighted these beneficiaries. We highlighted our partners, and we are still doing so today. Also, as part of the Forever 55 initiative, we launched a microgrant program. And LaKendria was my tag team partner and is still, to this day, my tag team partner on the Microgrant program. I'm going to throw it to her for a second just to give a really brief overview of it, but it gave us another opportunity to ensure that we were spreading this impact throughout our community where it was needed most.
Yep, absolutely. And as you mentioned, Claire, the microgrant program was really a way for our host committee to further its overall impact by partnering with and supporting local organizations that aligned with the 6 pillars that you mentioned. And so even though the microgrant application process was only about 3 weeks, we received over 200 applications from local nonprofits, which, to your point, was really confirmation for us that the needs of our local nonprofits had increased greatly as a result of COVID-19. And so we were really happy that we could support these nonprofits in their grassroots efforts. So after the vetting process, we ended up awarding a total of $280,000 to 28 local nonprofits in Tampa Bay, with each of them receiving about $10,000 each. Now, what was really incredible is that we ended up focusing on smaller nonprofits who were doing really incredible things on a grassroots level, where we could actually put dollars into the organization, and those dollars would go specifically to the clients that they served. Nonprofits that we believed would really, really greatly benefit from a microgrant, and that that $10,000 wouldn't just kind of get swallowed up in some grand program that we probably would never really see again. We have consistently touched base with nearly all of our recipients of the microgrant program, and each of them thus far have really shared how much the microgrant has made a difference in serving their clients, and how they've either been able to pilot new programs that support their clients or expand some of their current program offerings. So over the next 12 to 18 months, we will continue to monitor and track and communicate and partner with each of those organizations so that we can really get an understanding of their impact in the community, how many people they're serving, what are some of those great client testimonials that we can share so that the Tampa Bay community can continue to further support their efforts in making a difference.
Awesome. Thank you so much. It is it's rewarding to be on the end that's helping do some of the work, but I'm telling you, the opportunity that we've had to work with so many nonprofit organizations, but also the financial backing behind it with our partners that have been phenomenal, that have rolled their sleeves up and have been there every step of the way. This social impact and the legacy impact that these major events have on our community, the story isn't always told. And this was a priority for us, for our community, not to understand how impactful these major events are on our community and how they leave this lasting legacy. But also, again, I know I keep hitting this, and it's part of the title of this panel today. This was one of the most inspiring Super Bowls because this is what we, the NFL, and our community rallied around, is leveraging this platform to ensure that we were impacting others and inspiring change. So with that, I'm going to shift to the third thing that I mentioned at the top, and that was about strengthening our relationship with the NFL, which was already great, but having the opportunity to bring them back into market for a fifth time during unprecedented times. I know the word communication has been mentioned a lot. Communication, positivity, patience were probably the key elixir to hosting the Super Bowl. And there's no one that had probably those three words that she was living by daily more than Jenna. And so I'm going to let her talk a little bit about Super Bowl experience presented by Lowe's. Again, what this Super Bowl provided us was an opportunity to create a playbook that had never been written before, alongside our great partners at the NFL. And Jenna was in the trenches. I swear to God, she's Wonder Woman in terms of what she was able to do in helping co-produce this event for the very first time. So Jenna, take it away.
Thank you, Claire. Appreciate that. So as Claire mentioned, we had such a unique opportunity in Tampa to really play host to a lot of firsts. And if you guys are familiar with any of Tampa's former hosting efforts at these major events, it's kind of our MO. We really like to change things up, and Super Bowl was no different. So just to kind of give you some background on what Super Bowl experience is and what it was versus what it was in our hometown of Tampa. Traditionally, Super Bowl experience is an event that has been owned and operated and produced by the NFL solely. Traditionally a paid ticketed event that is hosted indoors, in a convention center type atmosphere. On a parallel path, the host committee, which is what we all served on, traditionally produces an event called Super Bowl Live, which is outdoors for the most part, a free event. So kind of two almost competing events. And I think that's really why the NFL over the last couple of years before we hosted really started to look at that model and think, why are we having these two events that really kind of conflict in nature? Why don't we merge them? So we were really excited to kind of be that guinea pig, if you will, to bring that new model to life. So we were really excited about joining efforts and having one cohesive event called Super Bowl Experience in Tampa Bay. And we, for the first time, Super Bowl Experience was free and open to the public. So that was really, really big for us. We always try and have some sort of free accessible event for our local community, of course, but also for those visiting fans. And this really helped be that big event for everyone. And we brought it outdoors. So Super Bowl Live is traditionally outdoors, but Super Bowl Experience wasn't, and it does require a ton of space. So, we really like doing that in Tampa. As you all know, Florida plays host to incredible weather in the fall and winter months. So we really wanted to leverage that and show off our destination and show everyone what Tampa's like in January and February when everyone else is bundled up. So we brought the event outdoors. And Claire mentioned, and others have mentioned already, the word partnership with NFL. And I think that's really key because they were our partners every step of the way. And this new Super Bowl experience model is no different. We worked together on kind of figuring out what that new footprint looked like and what that new kind of blueprint was for the event. And this is all pre-COVID, mind you. So we worked together to co-produce the event. And what that meant was, the NFL brought in their third-party production company, but we as the host committee kind of served as that extension to their team, bringing everyone together under one brand, if you will, in Super Bowl experience. As far as the footprint goes, I know I mentioned we brought it outside, but it wasn't just one venue. I think that was a big piece of kind of our brainchild, if you will. We have what's called the Tampa River Walk, which runs through the heart of our downtown campus. It's almost 3 miles long. And something that we always try and do when we have, even smaller events in Tampa Bay is to activate that kind of main artery, so that regardless of where you join the Riverwalk, you have something to do every step of the way. So that was our vision when we were starting to plan this new Super Bowl experience model. We had over 7 locations that we were going to program, kind of all spread out along the way. Ultimately, based on needs to kind of consolidate our footprint, we landed on 3 separate locations. A bulk of what kind of the NFL ended up managing directly was at Julian B. Lane Park, which is our largest public park in our downtown footprint. And then we, the host committee, helped produce 2 other locations in Curtis Hickson Park and a space that we ended up contracting called Technology Village. So not only was the event itself spread out over a 7-day run, but the actual footprint itself was as well. Because we were fully outdoors, when we entered into this new world that we all know now, and what we had to deal with COVID, we already had a model that we thought could be successful. It was outdoors and open air, and it was already spread out before needing to be spread out was a thing. So we felt like we had a really solid basis to kind of launch into this new way to plan events. And I'm not going to be, I'll be transparent in that there were moments where we didn't think that the event was possible. I mean, when COVID first started and you saw events like, things affiliated with the NBA and all of these other major events that were having to postpone or cancel, we were worried. Super Bowl experience is a massive event where thousands and thousands of fans come through it. But because we already have kind of this blueprint for hosting successful outdoor events, it really kind of helped jumpstart our planning process as we started to navigate through the new COVID world. So, again, in our partnership with the NFL, it was a true testament to our relationship with them when we were able to kind of come together and figure out, how do we host this event? Sure, logistically, but safely, ultimately, because not only are we, wanting to host this event, it's probably going to be one of the first large fan events that the nation sees in over a year. And so we kept that in, the front of our minds throughout the entire process. And in November, so about 3.5 months out from the first day of Super Bowl experience, the NFL produced what they called their event preparedness guidelines. And it was a beast of a document. It still is a beast of a document, but it was incredibly detailed, and there was literally no stone left unturned in what they wanted to make sure that we all kind of thought through as we looked to produce this event and welcome fans back, into an event like this. So there's a lot that was in it that you probably would be bored to listen to, but it kind of boiled down to almost a pyramid model, where you had this guideline blueprint document, and then it broke out into an infectious disease emergency response plan, which we call an Eider Plan now. And that plan essentially dictated the training and almost hiring of individuals that really were their sole purpose and sole job when Super Bowl experience kicked off was to make sure that these health and safety protocols were followed. I think that's a big thing, with events. A lot of people probably think, well, they just say they're going to do X, Y, and Z to kind of pass the sniff test. Not the case with any NFL event. that we hosted during Super Bowl, we had these infection control officers, ICOs, that from the moment we started setup through the end of teardown were there to facilitate, are you placing decals on the ground to make sure that people are spaced out? Are you cleaning everything routinely? What kind of products are you using to clean routinely? So it was extremely detailed, but you know, I do think that is probably the reason why we were able to produce the event in a safe manner and ultimately, you know, have these fans come through the event and not serve as a super spreader event. That was kind of our worry all along, is, you know, we want to host these people so badly and we want to have some sort of normalcy throughout the event, but how do we do it and feel good about what we're doing? As you can imagine, some of these pieces that were included in the COVID mitigation plans were extremely taxing from a staffing perspective. We had over 1,200 credentialed people work Super Bowl experience alone. So that doesn't include those that are at the stadium and those that are at the headquarter hotels. That's just one event. And there was a 2-step health screening process that every single one of those individuals had to go through daily. So that was kind of an extra layer of making sure that, sure, we want to make sure fans are wearing masks and that we're cleaning everything, but we also want to monitor our staff and our volunteers to make sure that those that are fan facing during this entire 7-day stretch are also safe. So we had to get creative with how to facilitate this process, which included checking a daily health questionnaire through an app and then doing a temperature screening and issuing a wristband to how do we staff that? You know, that's a lot of people coming through every single day, and you're looking at about 50% of our staff right here. So we needed some additional manpower, and we really kind of leaned on our local public health community to help facilitate that. And I think back on Super Bowl, there's so many great stories, and Claire and LaKendria and Brooke talked about kind of telling our story through all of these great initiatives. But I think one of them that was a really cool kind of behind the scenes look is our partnership with the USF CERT program. So that's their community emergency response team, and it is fully student run, and participation is all students from USF who are really focused on studying and graduating in a career that has to do with, you know, community and public safety, and helping the community in times of need. And this was one of them. So they filled every single health screening position and role for us for free as volunteers. They were there as early as 6 a.m. and as late as 12 a.m. for some of these events, and took incredible notes for us. And they were just incredible ambassadors, but I think just a true testament to how our community came together to help support the bringing back of live events. And everyone knew how important Super Bowl was and Super Bowl experience specifically for these families and fans, et cetera, to participate in. So I could go on and on and on about just how much COVID kind of threw us for a loop with Super Bowl experience. But, you know, we have a couple of facts and figures that I think, you know, showcase how successful it really was. We had, on average, 35,000 attendees per session for Super Bowl experience, which was an NFL record. So Super Bowl has been around for 55 years. I think that's one that we're pretty proud of there. You know, I already mentioned, I think we had over 240,000 total attendees attend Super Bowl experience, which again, just that number is so big, and just such a cool thing for us. 67 hours of onstage programming, 15 host committee partner activations, and I already mentioned the number of credentialed staff that we had work. So just kind of a glimpse at how big this beast of an event was, but just super, super proud of our team and for our community for rallying behind us, and for us to be able to produce something that our locals could come out and celebrate, but also fans could participate in as well. And just can't believe it's over, but it was a fun one, that's for sure.
Awesome. Thanks, Jenna. I know it was such a fascinating evolution. And Jenna talked about not knowing, you know, if the event was going to take place. That started with the game all the way to whether we were going to have a fan experience. And so about being patient through the process and really leaning on our partners at the NFL, who are such experts in this space, but also, of course, the health officials and the CDC. I mean, we were waiting to find out what preseason looked like. We were waiting to find out what the season looked like. We were waiting to find out what capacity looked like. We were waiting to find out, you know, it was a wait, and the amount of contingency plans that were created along the way to ensure that when the green light came on, we were ready to go, and it was going to be the safest Super Bowl. That was really at the forefront of everything, every decision that we made. And we often say event life, right? Who knows what you have to do each day to host an event. Jenna and so many of our team became experts in spaces we could have never imagined. But at the end of the day, it was such an incredible partnership with the NFL, partnership with our so many community folks to really pull this off. So with that, there is no way we could have done any of this without our community ambassadors. They are the MVPs and the lifeblood of the success of any of our major events. And Lisa was the quarterback, really spearheading this initiative and this program. And I want her to have the opportunity to share all about what that looked like. Of course, she went through tons of iterations of what that program looked like and how to execute it. But Lisa, if you could share with our listeners what the Community Ambassador Program was and the success story behind it.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you so much, Claire. So our community ambassadors, really, it's what we call our volunteers in Tampa. And if you've ever been fortunate enough to join us in the hosting effort of a sporting event, you know what that means. We want you to feel and embody everything Tampa Bay customer service. And we really rely so heavily on the individuals that we feel like the term ambassador is much more encompassing than the term volunteer. So, you know, I went home in March like everybody else did. And given the nature of everything going on last year, we didn't launch our program until July. So from March to July, I was working heavily behind the scenes, making sure that all of the flow of how it was going to work together worked with our recruitment system. And then I was also working with a lot of schools. So if you don't know, a lot of our ambassadors actually come from college programs that are typically sport management programs. We do have hospitality programs as well that participate, but they actually will travel into the destination where Super Bowl is being hosted, and they will be on site, whether it's for 2 or 3 days or even the whole week. And they're a huge asset to the program, and something that without those individuals' help, we would not have been as successful. So I was fortunate to meet a lot of those individuals in Miami. And so I had created relationships with them prior to COVID. And so during that period where we weren't sure what was going on and when we were going to launch, I checked in regularly. You know, we talk about communication a lot, and that was a huge, huge, huge part of it. Even if there wasn't a big update to share, just making sure that professors knew where we were, that I was still out there, that we were still planning for Super Bowl, we were still planning to have those ambassador needs. That was a big deal for us. In addition to working with any partners that were on board. So talking through every possibility with them, being very transparent about what we knew, what we didn't know, which was a lot at some points. But, you know, we wanted to make sure, and I wanted to make sure that those relationships were solid, so that when we were able to launch, we had the buy-in that we needed to be successful. So we did a soft launch in July, and then we rolled out everything out. We worked very heavily with the marketing team to make sure everything was going on social media. And we were really pleased with the response. We had almost 8,000 people register at the end of the day, which is a great number in any year, but a really impressive number in the middle of a pandemic. So that was amazing to see. And in the midst of all of this, we kind of had a realization that we knew we needed to train everybody, and we needed to train everyone virtually. So towards the end of the summer, we made that decision to go ahead and push for a virtual training. So I was lucky enough to work directly with the Fans First team, which is the customer service training the NFL provides to everybody. They provide it to vendors, they provide it to staff, they provide it to their volunteers. And I wanted to create something that was just focused on our ambassadors, what they were going to need to do, and not worry so much about some of the ancillary positions. So we were able to revamp that program and take it all virtual, which was amazing. And then we worked together internally to create all the trainings that were going to be needed based on what's your role? Are you a leader? Are you a student? You know, what does that look like? So that was definitely a labor of love. If anyone in the audience has ever put a training virtually, it is not as easy as you might think. But we're lucky that we were able to pull from our awesome team, and then we worked with a local agency as well that helped my vision come to fruition, and everyone was able to access trainings either on their phone or on their computer, and that was truly groundbreaking, because I think that they've done virtual pieces in the past, but not everybody. So it was nice to be able to know that your workforce or your ambassador force was coming to you for their first shift. They were trained, they were ready to go. So, you know, it was quite a wild ride. All of that launched in January, and then we were kind of on the ground running. But it was truly amazing to see the people that were with us from the beginning and with us throughout the whole week, and those individuals that had such a good time that they added shifts throughout the week, and they were just our cheerleaders all throughout Tampa Bay. And I'm very proud of the program. I'm proud of everyone who participated, and it sometimes feels like a dream. I think everyone would agree on this call that it doesn't actually feel like it was real. So very, very fortunate that we were able to pull off such a successful event.
Yeah, thank you, Lisa. And the ambassadors were truly the talk of the town. They were a sea of red in their pullovers, and they were at the airport in masses. Anyone who was arriving to Tampa was feeling the Super Bowl love. And it was just an incredible, I mean, like I mentioned, they're the lifeblood. They provide that customer service, warm welcome that made everyone's experience, whether you are local or visiting for the first time, feel so welcome and have so much fun. So thank you for pouring blood, sweat, and tears literally into that program and ensuring that it was a success. So before I'm going to throw one last question to each of the panelists, and I'm sorry we don't have enough time to probably answer a few more, but I also appreciate how thorough each one of you were in providing an overview of not only what you did, but how your area really impacted the success of this event. And when we speak of success, you know, everyone always wants to know what the economic impact is of any event. And we measure our economic impact here in Tampa really by the hard data, the data that we can truly measure. And when we look at our lodging analysis and our airport analysis and the statistics that came back as a result of that, what we can share is that during the pandemic, we were 47% at capacity and occupancy. And during the Super Bowl weekend, we were at 83%. That average daily rate went from 93 to 212. The dollars, again, this is at a time when our community needed it most. This was at a time when we're hosting the Super Bowl we weren't originally awarded. So this glass half full, you know, perspective is really important. It's not about spending time on what it could have been and what normal traditional Super Bowl years look like. It was about this year and how important this Super Bowl was to our community and the impact it did have economically and socially. When we look at the airport, the double amount of passenger airline travel and traffic took place during Super Bowl week. 3 times the amount of private planes were in market. I could go on, and LaKendria covered the Business Connect program so well. Those are our local vendors, you know, that were being sourced and hired and keeping those dollars here in our community for the events that were being hosted. So we are, as you have probably felt from the passion from these panelists, super proud of what we were able to accomplish. So I am going with that, because I like ending everything on a positive note. I feel this has all been positive, because I'm going to let them go around the horns real quick and share quickly their fondest memories. You guys have to keep this kind of quick because we're running out of time. So Lisa, you first.
Yeah, this is an easy question for me. So Friday, the 29th of January was our very first shift, and we had worked so hard to make sure everyone had uniforms, and just they showed up. I was just beyond thrilled that people showed up for their shifts. And so one of the rules we had in the building where I was working, you couldn't eat or drink inside. You had to go outside to take your mask off and do all the eating and drinking. And so the first shift deployed in the afternoon on the 29th. And I went outside to take a deep breath and to eat a sandwich and to take my mask off and have some water. And honestly, I started crying. And I was just so excited and so happy that we had people there volunteering, and they were just so excited to be there and just to be working an event that out of nowhere, I'm crying like in this tent by myself outside at Julian B. Lane Park. But truly, it was just the pride that I felt for everything coming to fruition in that moment.
That's awesome. It was powerful, and we were all moved to tears at times, that's for sure. All right, Jenna, you're up.
I had my share of tears, but I think it was more sleep deprivation that motivated it. But I have a favorite memory, and I think it kind of goes back to what Lisa was talking about, and Claire too, about just the impact of our ambassador program. We, like everything else, had to pivot on some of our private events too. And that was the case for a concert that we hosted, where we traditionally would have done it in a park and made it free and open to the public. We had to scale it down and really kind of hone in on a smaller group of about 400 that we had to pod out each individual group. So our group of staff and volunteers kind of plotted out this grid in a park and brought it to life. But it really didn't hit me until we had a group of ambassadors that were on site in the middle of the day, building 200 IKEA tables to put in these pods. And I'm sure probably all of you are familiar with how fun it is to build any IKEA furniture, much less 200 of something. But they did so with a smile on their face. They were there on their own dime from Tennessee, volunteering just for a couple bottles of water. But they were so excited and passionate about being a part of it in any way, shape, or form that it was just so cool to witness. And I certainly was really, really excited about the fact that they were there, because otherwise it would have been me. But just the amount of teamwork that goes into putting it on an event like this is such a cool thing to witness. And that was one of my favorites for sure.
I love that. Okay, Lakendria, your fondest memory.
My fondest memory was the culminating event that we hosted virtually, of course, the week of Super Bowl. And so typically the culminating event is a huge in-person celebration for all of the Business Connect businesses that were participants, and then a lot of the NFL contractors. Well, of course, we went virtual this year, but I think for me, the fondest memory was, I'm going through the culminating event and I'm sharing all of the wonderful things that Business Connect and the participants that had done. And my team is really talking about just kind of the impact. And I remember sitting in front of the camera and looking out at the TV screen and seeing all of the incredible comments of support and love and thank you and gratitude that all of our Business Connect vendors shared, and like their fondest moments, and just really being appreciative of all of the hard work that myself and our team had done to really keep them engaged, to keep them up to date on what was going on. Like they really were so appreciative, and we were worried, right? Like we were worried because we knew that these businesses probably wouldn't get the type of contracts that they would normally get in a normal Super Bowl. And so we were concerned about backlash from that, especially as Super Bowl week or game day came up. But to see the positive support and the gratitude and just thank you so much for allowing us to be a part of this and changing the program and making sure that we survived COVID literally, seeing that and reading those comments kind of in real time was very emotional and a highlight, I think, of the last 18 months.
Amazing, and then so rewarding, and such a tribute to your leadership. All right, Brooke, bring us home here. We've got like a minute.
Okay, so something I wasn't able to talk about, but I was very proud of, was we actually did a podcast the entire year leading up to the Super Bowl. So 55 weeks, over 60 episodes, 95 guests. I think there was like 15,000 downloads. And so to look back and see the way that our group was able to pivot and transition. At first, we were doing those in person. We started off down in Miami on Radio Row, and then continuing every week to do those online. It was really cool to look back and see all those episodes. And then something that was just kind of like an added plus on top was after the Bucks, went all the way and won, we realized that because of our connections, there was like 15 or 16 Bucks on the podcast out of those 95 guests. So whether that be players or alumni or staff or a GM or a head coach, we always ask them, how cool would it be to be the first team to play in the Super Bowl in your home stadium? So to watch those reactions and those responses become more realistic, and the excitement behind them as, the season went along and it became a reality for them, having come from the Bucks, I know Jenna probably feels the same, and just the pride that we have living here in Tampa, it was really cool to see. So if you want to, you can go on TampaBayLV.com. You can listen to those episodes as well as check out our newsletters. It kind of highlights monthly what we were doing throughout the year.
That's awesome, Brooke. That's a perfect close to, quite honestly, the history that was made in Tampa Bay has a lot to do with what we shared with you, of course, but the Bucks being the first team to not only play in their home city, but win in their home city, for that to be the exclamation point on our hosting efforts was incredible. And I know I speak for all of us. We couldn't have done any of this without the leadership of Rob Higgins. And then, of course, Team Tampa Bay, which is made up of really anyone and everyone in this community that rallies in support of these major events. But the city, the county, Visit Tampa Bay, Visit St. Pete Clearwater, the Bucks, the Florida Sports Foundation. I could go on and on and on. The franchises, TSA, the stadium, such a community effort. And so, Rachel, I'm going to throw it back to you. I want to thank you again for giving us this opportunity and this platform to tell our story.
Thank you, Claire. Thank you so much for your leadership. And again, thank you so much, Brooke, Lakindra, and Lisa, and Gina. Your very vivid conversations. You made me feel that I was on the day with you and I'm about to buy sandwich and cry outside. So thank you so much. It's been a wonderful conversation. It's a historical moment, and I appreciate so much students, faculty, and every attendee. Thank you so much for making time to join us. You all have a wonderful day and make every day a historical moment. Thank you. Go Gators.
Thank you.
Thank you.